Welcome, everyone. We appreciate your time. We know everyone is very busy, and we appreciate that you take the time out of your day to attend our webinar. We'll be providing you some helpful information today, we hope, on how to protect your tests online. The session today is Who, What, Where, Why, a guide to online protection strategies. And I'm very pleased to introduce my colleagues at Caveon, Jen Baldwin, Cary Straw, and Christy Zervos. A little bit about each of them. Jen Baldwin has been in the testing industry for 20 years and with Caveon Web Patrol as an executive web patrol manager for over 10 years. Her expertise is dealing with a vast array of online threats, including brain dumps, international concerns, and copyright issues for global clients, as well as her attention to detail and creativity make her a very valuable ally to have on your team. Cary Straw, also an executive web patrol manager. Cary has 30 years of extensive experience in online computing, design, brand management, sales, and test security, and it enables him to understand and know where the bad guys really hide online, how to find them, how to keep yourself safe while doing it, and how to create an online relationship that can get content removed now, not later. And finally, Christy Zervos is our Director of Operations at Caveon and also the Director of Web Patrol. She's been in those roles for over 15 years. Christy oversees her team's operations and is responsible for client satisfaction. Her team provides important web monitoring of test security threats for many large international high-stakes test programs in all areas of testing. Christy is a founder of Caveon Test Security. She's been with us since the beginning, and her passion is to see that all tests are administered fairly and securely. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Christy, and she will get us going today.
Thank you, Rochelle, and welcome everyone. We're excited to be able to share some of our ideas and strategies with you all. And during this webinar, we'll be discussing the who, what, where, and why of protection strategies. The who will include the people involved in your hierarchy and those you can recruit online to protect your exams. The what will cover which processes decrease the chance of infringing content and potential risk of an online threat, where the threat is originated from, and the best places to use your online resources are also an important aspect. Finally, the why explains how online protection strategies are useful to you and your company, as well as the importance of exploring new cutting-edge technologies. Who should be in your protection hierarchy? It's important to have a dedicated staff. Usually this would include probably your senior manager, a strong development test personnel, a security manager, and also your legal department. However, we do know that each organization is unique in its needs, so finding the best staff for your situation is essential. We have also found that open line communication between all groups is important. If constant collaboration is present, your team will be more apt to address the changes that need to take place, and confusion can be eliminated and efficiency is increased. Now, Cary will go ahead and talk to you more in depth about the different roles each staff member will play. So I'm going to turn it over to Cary.
Great, thank you, Christy. Good morning, everybody. So we want to go through a lot of information today, and as Rochelle mentioned at the beginning, we want to stop throughout for comments, questions. Some of these things may be familiar to you. Some of these items may be new to you. Hopefully all of them are helpful. And what I want to do first is go over some of the roles that each person has. So in senior management, what you're looking for is these individuals typically look at the 30,000-foot view. What we'd like to say is we think the senior management should be a little more involved in the entire scope of what's going on with your test security strategy and your protection hierarchy. So, for instance, you should have somebody that knows how much exposure your items are getting on the internet. A lot of people know that they have exposure, but they don't really know how much or where it's occurring. For instance, when in the testing cycle do these items start to show up? If you haven't figured out how that's working in your organization, it's probably a good idea to put some effort and time into figuring that out. Do items for any administration appear before they're delivered? So in other words, are Are there problems inside your organization as far as shipping? Who's got hands-on exams? How are your computer tests being delivered? What are proctors doing? And it's that information getting out before the actual administration that's becoming a problem. Senior management should have a good handle and understanding of what that is. Also, what's being said on the internet about your program and exams. Not just necessarily related to the security, but the overall reputation of that exam, because that directly relates to the security, which we'll get into a little bit later. Test development should also be intimately involved in the protection hierarchy, because what they can help with is figuring out what forms are most often exposed and help determine the reasons why. Also, if you have a data forensics department or you work with data forensics in any way, another great way to figure out what forms have been exposed, what the reasons are behind that. That can be extremely important in figuring out where to put some of your resources. If you're always getting the same forms, one, what about that? Do your question types invite exposure? Make sure that you're going through, and if you're having the same types of questions or the same forms over and over, what are the reasons behind that? And does it have any way to the way your question types are structured or how they're presented to the test takers? Is test development working hand in hand with security to quickly identify exposures? Test development departments tend to understand their exams better than anyone else in the organization because you've actually written them. So if security comes with a threat, test development can go, oh, yeah, that's absolutely from Form 2B 3.6, and be able to quickly identify it. The faster you can identify an exposure, the quicker you can react to it and get it taken down, the less likely it's to spread at that point. Also, once you have items that have been exposed, can you save those items by restructuring them? Can you change portions of the STEM? Can you clone the items? There's lots of different options out there to be able to extend the life of the exam. And that is really what the entire part of protection hierarchy is about, and having a protection strategy is extending the life of the exam, because no test is perfectly safe. It will never, ever be perfectly safe. Everybody will always find a way to find a way into cheating on your exam. The key is to extend the life of that exam as long as possible so that it saves you cost and time in your organization and increases the value of it reputationally. How does the level of compromise compare over forms and over time? So as you instituted your processes internally for security, does it seem to be affecting those forms that were a problem before? Are you fixing the problem? Things like that.
Sure, Cary, sorry to break in. People are saying they're having a little bit of a hard time hearing, so I don't know if you can get a little closer to your microphone.
Sure.
Thank you.
The test security manager is plays an integral role. Definitely want to have this person be aware of all of the pieces. This is the hub. Typically, the test security manager is the first responder when it comes to any of the issues that occur online. There's a close relationship that this person or this department should have with test development, with senior management, with the legal team. It's very important to take all of the pieces that you're seeing online and try and create a picture. What are the pieces of the puzzle? What are we seeing online? What's the situation online? Are you finding just pieces, parts of your exam? Are they parts of test questions? Is it just people that are congregating to prepare for your exam? And if so, that's great. But those are the places that you want to spend some time monitoring so that you're aware of the activity. Also, who's posting things online? Are these organized companies that are harvesting all of your exam items and selling them online? Is it individual test takers that are just getting out of hand and not following their non-disclosure agreement? It's important for you to work with test development to decide at what point is the exposure too much exposure? When is it impacting your exam? If sites claim to have the real test items, because a lot of websites out there will, if they're the organized ones, they're going to claim that they're selling your real test questions. Well, sometimes that's bogus. And in fact, often it's bogus. Maybe they're just creating their own set of test questions. But I would never just rely on brushing that under the rug. Look into it. Analyze the content that they have for sale. You probably should purchase some of the items that they're offering and have your test development go through it. The other thing that's really important, if you have practice exam material and you have a list of affiliated test prep vendors that you're allowing to distribute or offer courses on your behalf, keep tabs on those. You should do routine checks of these businesses to see what they are offering and that their material is approved by you. And like I said, do it routinely, because they might start off with your material and then they might find other things online to boost their test prep course, and it may be things that you don't want distributed. So that's really important. Legal, again, very, very important part of the whole process. They should be involved from the very beginning, and they should be notified of anything that's going to require any legal action. You should come to them at the very beginning and talk about what the process is. What are your intentions for your test security program? Legal's going to have a lot of questions. Legal's going to want to know about the copyright of your exams. They're going to want to know what you need from them. So we always recommend at the beginning of your program that you create a set of takedown letters, whether it's leveraging the Digital Millennium Copyright Act or whether it's a simple cease and desist. This is why it's so important to have everyone involved together and work together to find out what the situation is online. If you have a good handle of what your issues are, whether it's widespread exposure, whether it's students and candidates that are often going against the non-disclosure agreement, all of these situations need to be handled differently. If you have candidates that are, again, with the non-disclosure agreement, we really recommend that you guys have a clear and concise information and expectations set for your candidates and students. When they're signing the NDA, oftentimes people aren't reading it, so it needs to be very, very clear what those expectations are for sharing information, for discussing online during test prep, and what are the consequences. So if somebody does violate their non-disclosure agreement, what's the impact? What action is going to be taken? All of these are very important to have in place with your team, so that you aren't wasting valuable time in making critical decisions when an issue arises. Knowing what you're going to do and who's going to do it is very impactful.
Also, to address privacy issues is important. By that, what we mean is there are a lot of, especially in the education market, young kids that are out sharing exam questions, taking pictures of the exams during tests. And what are your processes to protect their privacy and protect your corporate privacy as well? So those are other areas that are very important to do. Thanks, Jen. Appreciate that. Also, within the group, once you've created your hierarchy, you need to have one person that makes the ultimate decision on what to do with a threat. It can be senior management, it could be the test security manager, it could be somebody completely different. But there should be one person to go to that can quickly address any threats that come in. This can be important, especially if there's a large exposure that gets grabbed onto by the media, or that is an exposure that occurs in a large one on social media. So the faster you can react to those threats, the better it is. And having one person in charge of that tends to make the process much easier. Also, have your processes that you've created and put in place allow you to quickly respond regardless of the size of your group. So if you're from a large multi-tiered organization that has hundreds of people involved, well, that's going to be a whole different process scheme than it will be on a small program with 1 or 2 people. So regardless, you need to make sure that you can react quickly, efficiently, and effectively, regardless of the size of the group that you have. So after all of this, and we'll get into a lot more details, but after all your effort to put together your team, is the exposure situation getting better or worse? That's probably the most important question of all. If you've gone through this, and some of you have already had these programs for years, is your situation improving? Is it staying the same, or is it getting worse? If it's staying the same or getting worse, it probably makes sense to look at what you're doing, how you're doing, and what you can choose or use to change that situation more quickly. So what I want to do now is just stop and see if there's comments or questions. Comments about what you're doing in your program, what team members you might have out there, who's been successful for you, anything that has to do with kind of putting together your team and your processes, and then just any questions in general. So we'll just take a couple of seconds and see if we have any.
Yeah, if you have questions, please go ahead and type them in the question box. I do have one for you, Cary. Being that I'm from a small program, I have a number of roles, including test security. How do you recommend I get started with so much to consider?
Oh, that's a great question. So the first thing that I would do is figure out where your exposures are occurring online. You want to put your, and we'll talk about this here in the next section, but you want to put a lot of your resources into those areas where you're actually occurring, your exposures are occurring more quickly, especially if you're a small program with limited resources. Also, again, you probably won't have to worry about a huge team. If it's a small program, you're probably the one person that's going to be in charge of everything. So it's very important to understand everything you can about online test security. Attending this webinar is a great resource. There's lots of other great resources out there that can help you understand how the internet works, how things spread, what are good search methodologies. There's all sorts of tools available that can help you work this out. And of course, Caveon has lots of things that we can help you with as well as on that. And we're more than happy to discuss any of that with you. What other questions?
That's the only one I see for now. So I think we can go ahead and move on.
Sounds great. I'm going to have Jen take over for a minute.
So what common processes increase the chance of your content appearing online? It's really important to have a strong presence online. During your test administration and throughout the year, if you test throughout the year, your test takers are going to congregate in areas to do their test prep. It's really important that you know where those areas are and become active. Either if you're reading along, just so that you know the flow of conversation. Again, you're gathering information. Each time you go online, it's gathering more information that are going to help you put the pieces of that puzzle together. You want to also be interactive with people, whether it's you or whether you have a team of people that are helping you while you're online and watching. Another really good deterrent is providing a large amount of free practice material. Again, most people are want to just prepare for the test so that they can pass the test. So at any time, if you see people questioning like, oh, what's the best way to study? It's really good to jump in there and offer them resources and direct them to your free practice material. Again, this is talking about the non-disclosure agreements, and these need to be enforced. It's really important that people know what the expectations are and know what the consequences are. Limiting the reuse of exam forms and items. It's, again, with online, since the spread can happen so quickly, it's very important that that can be limited. There's many ways that you can salvage exam material after it's been exposed online. And so that's something to work with your test development team on. What are the best places to use your online security resources?
So before we kind of go on to that, I also wanted to kind of go over a few things. We've had lots of programs on the last slide where we were talking about the common processes to decrease the chance of your content appearing online. We've had large programs that flood the market with free practice materials that, when this program started, there were thousands of threats, almost every administration. They flooded the market with free practice materials. They enforced their non-disclosure agreements, and they limited the reuse of their exam forms. Over a period of 2 years, the number of threats went from thousands to 5 or 6, maybe 10 during each administration. And this is a program that gives exams year-round. So it's a consistent result, which is great. If you're a small program or large program, all of these steps can be really, really helpful. Let's see. So if we go back to where are the best places to use your online security, as we started to touch on a little bit earlier, if you determine where your exposures occur online and where they're occurring mostly, you can determine where you should start looking first. So if you're an education program, well, you can look at who your test takers are. They're typically kids, young kids up to teenagers. Where do they live? They live online and social media. So if you focus a large amount of your efforts into social media, you'll probably capture 80% of the infringing content that's out there. Now, you don't want to eliminate everything else because they might also be in forum and discussion groups. They might be in all sorts of other areas. But your resources are typically limited, so using them in the places where they typically occur and where the exposures occur more often is a much more effective use of your time and resources. So why do online protection strategies matter? That's a very good question. Do they matter, first of all? And what we found over our decade or more of doing this is that they very much matter. It lengthens the usable life of your tests. These tests cost thousands and thousands of dollars to create, to manage, to recreate. So the longer you can keep these exams viable, the better it is for everybody. 2, having these online protection strategies increases the perception of the quality of your exam. What I mean by that, if you have a great online presence, if people know that you're watching and you care about what your exam is, if you are actively talking in forums and discussion groups with your test takers, if you're giving them lots of great information, if you have recruited your test takers to become brand ambassadors for you, there's all sorts of ways that you can increase the quality of the perception of quality of your exam. If you enforce your agreements, if you're there for them before, during, and after the exams. It takes a little bit of effort, but it pays back in huge dividends as far as your reputation goes. And also, having these protection strategies helps to lower the cost of replacement because, again, you're extending the life out of it for the exams.
Why should I worry? I found a threat, got it removed, I'm good, right? Absolutely not. Getting the threat removed is just the beginning, just the very, very first step. You must do follow-up monitoring. If it's a particular web page that had posted a portion of your test or your full test, you'll want to not only go back and look at that specific URL to make sure that if you've gotten it removed, you want to make sure that it doesn't get reposted. Because websites will do this. If they think you've turned your back, they'll go up and put the material back up there. And oftentimes they don't use the same URL. I mean, surprisingly, they do sometimes use the exact same URL. But if they don't use the same URL, they may put it on a different page. They're going to relist that threat after the removal. If it was up there for any length of time, a lot of times whoever else has seen it may be sharing it and reposting it elsewhere. It's important, and we're going to talk about this later, where to look after you've had a threat online and where it is spread. So it's also very important to ask the question, do you have to remove online threats? And I think Cary had some points about why it's so important to make that determination and decide for yourself.
Well, do you have to remove online threats? A lot of people wonder, do I have to? What's the problem if I don't? There are certain programs where if you redo your exam on a yearly basis, and there are a lot of them out there to do, especially some small programs. If you redo your exams on a yearly basis, they don't have a huge amount of time to spread online for groups to get a hold of them, for them to become a problem. So you may not have to remove any threats that are a year or 2 or 3 years older. Also, for large programs that have a huge database of questions and exams, typically, unless things are within the year or 2 years prior, you probably don't have to worry about removing any threats that are older than that. Now, every program has exceptions, but in general, you don't always have to remove a threat. Focus on the newest threats, the things that are the greatest problem for your current exam and the current way it's put together.
So once there is a threat online, where is it likely to spread? Again, this is very important that you identify where your initial types of threats are, and where your candidates congregate. So as Cary was saying, if you have maybe something in the educational sector, K through 12, or any of the younger crowd, social media is going to be one of the first places that may originate. But it's also a place that threats can spread if they've started on other websites. So brain dumps, as you all know, brain dump is when people take remembered test questions and they dump it. So that's what the term means in general. But we use the term brain dumps to describe these organized websites that have been a problem for the testing industry since tests went online and probably before that. These websites are gathering the test questions, selling them in full packages. Sometimes it's made up material. Sometimes it's your released test material or your old tests. Sometimes it's your practice test material. Regardless, you need to investigate to make sure that it doesn't have your real items. One of the tricks that a brain dump uses is advertising using blogging and social media to drive people back to their website to purchase the product. So if you have found something on a brain dump, you'll also want to check, use some of the key search terms to find out where they're blogging. One brain dump could have 100 different blogs, all about here's some demo questions, and if you want to buy the full package, and they'll provide a link to go back to that brain dump. It's free advertising for them, so they've leveraged that and social media as a way to drive traffic back to their website. Forum and discussion groups. Again, if somebody gets their hand on something, everybody's going to start to chatter about it. Many of you are familiar with the active forums where your candidates may congregate, but there are some new things that are kind of occurring that we found, and sometimes you wouldn't think that it would be a likely place for people to go. There are some apps, these end-to-end encrypted messaging apps are becoming a larger problem because the data is not stored on their server, so it's a little more difficult to get the content removed. So it's important to read those because they often share other information of where your tests are stored. For example, somebody might be chatting about, hey, I found this great compilation of test questions and it's on Google Drive, and they'll provide the link to Google Drive or some other archived site. So again, with having a presence online and really being active, reading through the forums and threads really give you a lot of information that you can find, because there's patterns to this. The students find what works and they continue to do it. In fact, one of the apps is a gaming app. and it was designed, you know, for gamers to be online and put their little headphones on and chat back and forth. Well, this turns out to be a great place for students and adults to be chatting back and forth. They think that they're flying under the radar. The way to get involved with these is you can ask to join. If you're reading forums and discussion groups, a lot of times people will provide an invitation key to allow you to join that group. So if you're reading and paying attention and staying actively involved, because those invitation keys sometimes are only good for 24 hours. So you kind of have to be on it, and then you can use that invitation key, and then boom, you're in that group, and you can monitor all the activity that's going on there. I think that kind of gives you a good clue about where things can spread and how actively people are involved and how quickly things can move from one location to another. So again, knowing where your problems are will help you understand where they are likely to spread.
Great. So we wanted to take another minute and see if there's any other questions or comments.
And there are. Cary, let me go ahead and take a couple questions now. Do you have any advice for patrolling the internet for unauthorized items?
For patrolling the internet for unauthorized items, yes. So consistency, I think, is probably the most important thing. You can't go out, well, consistency and the amount of time. You can't go out for an hour and hope to find a large number of valid threats. The key is to use several hours at a minimum and then do it consistently. Have somebody in your organization out there every couple of days, even every day, for at least a few hours at a time. Because just about the time that you get to the point to where you start to find things, your hour's over, and then what have you really accomplished?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions people have is setting up something like Google Alerts. Yes, that will bring you back some results. No, that is not all of the results that are on the internet. Google only indexes a small percentage of what's out there, and they don't access many of the social media. For example, you're not going to get posts related to Twitter through a Google alert. So you need to be on Twitter and reading tweets in order to access that information.
Right, and the reason is Google's index doesn't update as fast as social media does, so it's very difficult for them to keep up.
I do have another question regarding an NDA. They say we have a set of rules to which they agree. There are probably 8 to 10 rules, and the NDA is in there. But as you said, people may just agree without actually reading it. Do you recommend having those and then a separate NDA?
Yeah, sure. There's nothing wrong with most of those. Another way to really enforce an NDA is find out where your people are talking. If they're on forums and discussion groups, post that NDA and reminders and talk in that forum discussion group with people live so that they see that during your administration, you're actually paying attention to what you do. In other words, you care about the quality of your exam as much as they care about it. I think that those are probably the 2 best things to do.
Okay, great. Thank you. One more question. Our biggest problem is determining when a post on social media crosses the line to be revealing content. Do you have any tips for this?
That's interesting. That's absolutely something that you need to get together with test development and your senior management and legal to discuss. When does it compromise your exam? How much is too much? That's not something I can answer for you, but there are guidelines and probably some data forensics. There's various ways you can track when does that exposure give someone an unfair advantage of the exam if someone else were to read that, the pre-knowledge of that information. And that's...
Yeah, and also, and I don't know if this answers your question directly, but when you find things online, whether it's social media or anything, you have to set up in your own organization the level of where you feel things cross the line. So, for instance, if people are discussing the exam and it's post-mortem and they just kind of want to talk about their experience. Well, and there was a question about a purple dinosaur. Well, great. I don't think purple dinosaur, if everyone just says purple dinosaur, typically would be a major problem. Now, if they start talking about the purple dinosaur ate the Triceratops and did this and that, well, sure, then we're crossing over into the line. So you want to make sure that you allow your examinees to talk about their experience, but make sure that you have a defined border of where that's not okay, and that they know that online, again, by being active in the administrations.
And speaking to that, if someone exposes one test question, what's your action going to be? So these are the questions you should be asking your team. Are you going to remove that test question from the test form? That's one way to handle it and manage it. You could salvage that test question, rewrite it so that it's still weighted the same. That's another technique that's used. If an entire test form is exposed, then you have a bigger problem. I see a lot of people think, well, we got that one page removed and it only had 3 views, so we're probably safe. That's never true, because you don't know where else it could have been shared or spread. You don't know if somebody's printing that information and distributing it in their classroom for test prep. So never rely on, well, it was just minimal exposure. We only saw it once online. That usually the problem is a lot bigger than that, and just have the assumption that it's bigger than that, and then you can make your decision after that.
Right.
Great. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and move on, and then we can ask the last few at the end.
Fantastic. Great. So what is the potential risk of an online threat? We've talked about a little bit of this, but there can be a lot of risks that you don't necessarily think of. Reputation problems. If you have a program that's constantly being stolen, people are talking about it, it's easy to get your items, what is the online not just online, but overall reputation of the quality of getting that certification? It goes down exponentially because people feel, it's super easy to do. So that reduces your monetary gain from that. It reduces the length of, the number of people willing to actually take the exam. It creates a problem that you don't really care about your exams. You're just in it for the money. There's all sorts of things that people think in their minds that may not be true, but based on those threats that are out there, it can create a lot of problems. 2, media involvement. If you're not keeping a great tight rein on what's going on online with your thing and with your program, and you have a large exposure and the media gets involved, they will run and look for any little weakness in your program to. It's another very important reason, and you never know when that's going to happen. For instance, we had a large program a few years ago where it just spread like wildfire. We had one threat that started off with 1 or 2 people. Somebody else in the blogging community got a hold of it who had media contacts. It then spread like wildfire. We went from 2 or 3 threats to thousands within hours. That's how quickly it can go. Then the Huffington Post and other people got a hold of it, and it just went viral. And there's nothing you can really do about that. Once that's to that level, you just have to deal with what the fallout is. So having a handle on these things and having a quick response time, which is why it's so important to have one person make the decision, have the team be able to communicate back and forth very quickly. Don't reuse your exam items. Have a great reputation online. It's so important to have all of these things in place. So if these type of crises happen, you're prepared. Regardless of the size of your program, you can deal with it. Shortened exam line. That's another thing that having those threats can do. This one's kind of important. I'm just going to touch on this quickly. People also wonder where. So I found this threat online. It seems to be in Iowa. Well, you don't know that. People, especially people that are trying to steal exam items, will use what are called VPNs or virtual private networks. They allow you to anonymize your online activity all the way down to your location. So even if you find something that appears from what you found, like their IP address, shows them being in Iowa, it's entirely possible they're in Croatia or China or California. You just don't know. As web patrollers, we instruct our team to use anonymized VPNs all the time to protect our searching online. Being able to do that, it makes us more effective, but it also makes it difficult for people to find what we're doing, which is great. But don't rely on where things are originating geographically. It's probably not very accurate. There's other ways. Look for hints in the content itself as to what the location is. Are the people talking about certain places that they're from? Is their grammar broken English? Well, if it is, then likely it's probably not a domestic threat. There's lots of little clues you can find if you really start going through threats.
Who can you recruit to help you online? There is a lot of free resources that you can recruit to help protect your online exams. Again, knowing where your problems reside and or where, not where the problems are necessarily, but where your candidates are congregating to prepare for their exam. If it's a particular forum or several forums, get in touch with the forum moderator. Have them understand when your test administrations are occurring and, like Cary was saying, some of your NDA expectations. Set expectations. Be involved. Have the people that are using that forum as a place to study be well aware of what your intentions are and what your expectations are. The forum moderators can help you monitor that activity and remove information. We've had clients in the past that have used this technique. They had, the candidates were kind of crossing the line every time they would talk about test questions in just too much detail. But once the expectations were set, the forum moderator would say, hey, you can't say that, and they would delete that post. And, that's free to you. Another way is peer ambassadors. Same thing. If you're people that are taking your exams have studied for a long time, they want your exams to be valid because, they've gained that certification. Many people do not want cheating to occur. It's not fair. So they can set the tone in a lot of these blogs and discussion groups. Use that and leverage that.
Along with that, I wanted to touch on one other little thing with peer ambassadors. With peer ambassadors is with the online community these days, especially with gamers and some of these gaming apps, things like that, they love having accomplishments that they can get, rewards for what they do. There's badges, programs that you can put together to reward them for actually being your brand ambassadors. That doesn't really cost you anything. It's more great marketing. So I would also get together with your marketing team and say, hey, look, we've got a great group of people out there that we have for our test takers. We want them to help us promote, secure, and protect our exam. By doing that, we'll give them a badge. You are a super whatever badge owner. And you can even post it on your own websites. If you run your own forums and discussion groups, they can get their own accomplishments, allow them to upvote or downvote. There's all sorts of ways outside of the box you can think of to help get your test takers on your side. So the last thing is, and this kind of leads into that, why is it important to explore cutting-edge technologies and processes to stay ahead of the game? Why is it important to explore cutting-edge technologies and processes to stay ahead of the game? So the thing with badges, including and incorporating your test takers in your efforts, it's important because it helps to keep ahead of the thieves. And there's other things that you can do. Find out the latest cutting-edge ways of delivering exams, the latest cutting-edge ways of creating exam questions. There's all sorts of spectacular things on the research end and on the cutting edge that are ready for market now that are great ways to increase the quality of your exam, the security of your questions, the quality of your questions, new ways of tracking incidents when you find them. Spectacular ways of doing that as well. All of this helps to increase your exam validity, increase your overall exam security, and remove, more importantly, the weaknesses typically associated with programs and methods that have been around for decades. Sure, they're great, and unfortunately, we all tend to like to take the easiest route because we're so busy. But some of these outdated programs are outdated for a reason. They just don't work in the modern world, and especially online. So the more that you can keep ahead of that game, the more proactive you are, the more secure your entire program is going to be, and frankly, the more fun you're going to have with it, because it's always great to play with new toys. So if you take those 10 steps and put them together, it gives you a great protection strategy to address your threats, know who's doing the exposures, who do you have in place to cover them, what processes do you have that addresses those threats, why is it important to do them. So basically, we wanted to put together a handout. As a matter of fact, the entire slide deck will be available for you that you can put into a booklet, post it in your offices. Everyone can use it as kind of a framework to start to build upon. But also, here's a threat removal process that'll give you the 6 steps that you need to know to identify the teams and roles that you have, how to send and prepare a DMCA letter, what you need to do to track removal of a threat, when to escalate things to your legal team, what it means to clear threats, and why ongoing monitoring is important. Again, any of these items are available for you, and we'll have that to you after the presentation at some point soon. And with that, we'll open it up for the final questions and answers, if there's anything.
And we do have a few coming in. First of all, what are the common consequences for breaching an NDA for test item exposure? And would you recommend going as far as invalidating a test score in a specific case?
Oh, absolutely. If it's an egregious, if they're sharing actual content online, I wouldn't hesitate about doing those type of things. If you don't follow through on your NDA, they have zero weight. That's the bottom line.
Right. Okay, can you talk about archive sites that you mentioned earlier? Maybe name a few?
Sure, absolutely. There's lots of archive sites. There's things like Google Drive. Everyone's familiar with that in Google Docs. There are a lot of individuals that put things on there. There's archive sites that are document sites. For instance, Quizlet would be a flashcard site. Let me think of some of the other actual. Dropbox has, you can get private Dropboxes. Anything that archives documents, files, things like that. Sync is another one, sync.com. There's a lot of different places out there. Kim.com has one that's called Mega. He's actually kind of being a good boy lately, but his prior site was a huge problem as far as stolen materials. This one's a little more difficult to break into, so it may still have bad things out there, but that's another option.
Great, thank you, Cary. Another question, what's the best way to monitor non-English language forums?
So I think the best way is to hire people that speak those languages. Now, when we first started doing Web Patrol a decade ago or more, we didn't have people that spoke foreign languages, so we relied on Google Translate, which back then was really bad. But you can take discussions and put them in Google Translate and get an approximation of what's out there. And the nice thing is if they talk about your exam, they usually write the questions in English. Mm-hmm. So that's one way to kind of bypass that. But the better way is just to hire a few people in the languages that your tests are given. And they don't have to be full-time employees. Maybe they're contractors. Maybe they're whatever that you can, or find a company that does that for you.
The important thing about understanding the language is understanding cultural context. A lot of times, some other countries have a very different way of communicating than we do, and some of the information is implied, or you have to intuit what the conversation is. It can be tricky. Even if you know how to read and write that language, it might be better to have somebody who understands culturally what's going on.
Yeah, that's very important in some of the Middle Eastern languages, Arabic, things like that, where
The discussions themselves are very unique in how they're crafted. So those are all good ideas.
Yeah, great suggestions. Okay, another question. So what's the best practice for getting involved in these social media groups? Do you create fake profiles, or how can you best engage with people without them knowing who you are?
Well, yes, you can do it anonymously, but we also recommend that you do it as yourself. It's a great idea to take the tactic of creating a presence, so they understand that you're involved, you care, you're watching, you're part of the solution. You can offer practice material. You can offer solutions to cheating. Anonymously, though, is also a great tactic, because then you can kind of sneak around and watch what they're doing. So yes, create a Gmail email that has nothing that anonymizes you. And
here's another reason why it's so important. You'd be surprised, and unless you've been out on these forums for years, it's really hard to determine this, but we've noticed that people think that you are trying to get them to fail your exam. So they think it's us against them. There's a huge mentality with many, many programs out there. So by having a public presence in these forums, discussion groups, social media, makes it that you put that message out there that we're just here to help you be successful at this, so that we're all successful at it. Creating public social media accounts and then directing your individuals there, because there's great practice materials that you're going to be posting, because there's awards they can earn by doing certain things. Great ways. And then, as Jen said, having anonymous accounts are important as well, just so you can help to track what's going on without that interaction.
There's nothing wrong with, if you do it anonymously, there's nothing wrong with posing as a peer. You can be involved in the discussion. It's perfectly okay online, so that you can act as their advocate if you're not going to do it directly as yourself.
Right. One caveat I put in there is just be careful with what you're talking about and how you're talking with, if you're in the education market with kids. But other than that, it's always a great thing.
And don't cross the line to solicit information, because I think you'd want to be aware of legally what you can and can't do. You can't draw things out from people. But if somebody's posting that they have test questions available, there's no problem with you saying, "Great, can you send those to me?" If you're doing it anonymously. I mean, why not? They're offering it.
Absolutely.
Those are all very good points. Thanks, you guys. We're getting really close to the top of the hour, and I don't see any questions that I don't think we've covered. But if you think of one after the fact, please feel free to send us an email. So we'll go ahead and close the session for today. I want to thank our presenters, Cary, Jen, and Christy, for all the helpful information on protecting your exams online. I've put our info at caveon.com email address up there, just because it's shorter and easier to remember than our names. But if you have a question, go ahead and send it there, and we'll triage it out to Jen, Cary, or Christy. Thanks again for attending, everyone, and have a great day.